the interesting fact that Friedrich Rebbe, when he starts talking about sensitivity to Elokus, that sensitivity is aroused dafka through mitzvah asay, through experiencing the Elokus and doing a mitzvah, and that will also obviously have a positive expression on the person's ability to not be interested in taivas and elam hazeh, because he'll appreciate Elokus and therefore have less appreciation for the wonders of the world, so to speak. Now we said the Rebbe's going to talk about the neshama, and then the nefesh elokis, nefesh abamis. The Rebbe says this is 2/5 of the way up from the bottom of the page. Last two words on the line: Tehine and nefesh elokis. Hu elokus be'etzem mahusa. Is elokus. Nefesh elokis doesn't have to connect the elokus; it is elokus. Ubefrat, particularly, and in our situation, what are we talking about? A nitzet shabai, the spark of that nefesh that is found in the body, and is vitalizing the body. When nitzet prati or shayach el gufei prati, this specific spark that is responsible for his body. Shal yedea, who margish through, because a result of that, who margish b'chol inyanim elokim. Why is it that we are able to be sensitive to elokus? Because we have a godly soul. That godly soul experiences godliness, appreciates godliness, and wants us to be connected to godliness. Umargish ma'od. What else is the nefesh elokis sensitive to? Margish ma'od b'davar shu managed le'elokus. It's very sensitive to something that's contrary to elokus. Hainu, the davar she'ein elokus begilui, something that's not elokus in a revealed way, meaning even something that would be so-called parav, right? Meaning, is there such a reality? Well, it doesn't take long in learning Tanya to realize there's not very many things in life that are parav, if any. Klipas nega is only klipas nega until you express it. Then it's either kedusha or tuma. Right? It's in that middle state, so to speak, in the state of potential. But that activity or that reality that shayach to klipas nega, that piece of meat that shayach to klipas nega. So it's only klipas nega as long as it's not being eaten. Once it's being eaten, what happens to it? Well, if it's being eaten mitzad the taiva of the meat, so then it descends down into a state of tuma. If it's being eaten mitzad the need for energy to serve the Eibishter, so then it's elevated to a state of kedusha. But it's not that it stays in a state of noige. The noige is just able to go one way or the other, but once it goes somewhere, it goes one way or the other.
What about the case where you're eating kosher food but you're overindulging? So is that it's all kosher, but you're unrefined in your Then it says is this parav, or that still goes into one?
No, it's not parav. I mean that's exactly the point. That food is edible. Okay, that means that food can be elevated. The opposite is also true. So then it depends on me. What am I doing with it? If the person does it, he's eating just because it's lunch, and he's eating lunch, and he's not thinking about it one way or the other. So then he's not involving himself in some terrible state of tuma, right? Absolutely not. Baruch Hashem, he's just filling up the tank and getting on with life. Okay, fine. If he's sitting there, pondering the menu for half an hour, so even though it's glatt kosher, mamish, the restaurant's so kosher that the food says amen to your word. But if the whole reason the person's there is mitzvah is taivas and elam hazeh, so then what's that got to do with kedusha? Is that better than being in a treif restaurant? It's incomparably better. So there's no comparison. Okay, but there is still some other way to go in life. That doesn't mean that we become ascetic. Right? And we sit on the ground and put ashes on our head. You just have to have a mindset in terms of what's important and what's not important. It might very well be that you have to go to a restaurant. Why are you taking someone out to the restaurant? You're taking your wife out to the restaurant because she needs a break. You're taking a relative out to the restaurant because they came to visit. You're taking a friend out to the restaurant because they need a place to sit and schmooze with them, and you don't have a place because they're, whatever, you're both from out of town. Whatever, you know. I go out to breakfast with a friend of mine in Crown Heights. Whenever we're in Crown Heights together. Why? Well, we don't have anywhere else to sit. So we sit at breakfast together. Have a good time. Is the food the reason we're there? It honestly isn't. Not that we're big holy guys, but that's really not why we're there. We want to see each other. So we have to eat breakfast and we want to see each other. So you see each other over breakfast. That's fine. Pour over the menu for 15 minutes to look for just, what do you recommend? I mean, you're eating eggs in a breakfast place, just like order an egg and eat it. Just try to make sure that the yellow doesn't drip on your beer.
Essen bench, everything tastes the same anyway.
Essen bench. Right. The first, I don't know about I've never been in the new Gilgal of Essen bench, but the old Gilgal, we used to call it Fressen Belch.
Yes.
The new Gilgal is good.
I don't know. I've never been there. It was there for years. I mean, years, and then it disappeared. Right. And then Lipsker's Makolit. It's the only thing open. You come out of the Verbringen late at night, 1:30 in the morning. You're hungry. Everybody exit 770 together, and there's a Makolit that's half the size of this room that only has yogurt with mold. And everybody's like crashing in there trying to figure out, that's it. And no one there is eating mitzad the taivas of eating whatever. You're not going to find anything in there that will fulfill any taiva whatsoever. You're just hungry. It's 1:30 in the morning. You've been standing on one foot for the last 4 hours. So, you're hungry. And so eat. You're hungry, eat. Right? I mean, one of the things we've talked about, but it is important in terms of relationship with food today, is kafia doesn't mean you don't eat. There's so much food. Baruch Hashem, the Eibshter is so good to us. So what? Eat healthy food. Eat healthy food. That's your iskafia. Eat things that are healthy. In yeshiva you have less of a choice. But in all fairness, the food they give you here is, what I see at least, is not unhealthy stuff. I mean, there are choices to make that are not healthy, but I mean, generally the food is just fine. It's not vegan, blah 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 blah. All that. Okay, potato is not vegan, but is it relatively healthy food? Yes, it's relatively healthy food. There's nothing going to kill you. I don't know what dinner is.
Salty and oily.
I'm saying it's salty and oily. I mean,
but they put on
I'm
veggies.
so
like
in
taking
tune
veggies.
with my body that it's a little too oily, so I have to get past that. None of this is going to hurt anybody. A person can eat food like this for 120 years and live a very long time. It's just not, there's nothing really, really terribly unhealthy, unless a person is a fanatic. If a person's a fanatic, okay, so if you can make your own food. Mm-hmm. We had guys, I remember my first, second year in yeshiva, so there were guys who was their first year, they all came. There were 4 hippies who came, they got from with the same Rav in Brooklyn. And they were vegetarians, and they were this, and they were that, and they used to come with their own bowls, and their own chopsticks, and their own food, and they'd sit down at the table, and they'd take out their food, and they'd put their tamari sauce on it, and the whole day was all that. They were great guys. And while we were eating, I mean, the stuff they were feeding us was not healthy, okay? And they would eat their healthy food, which was good, it was fine. At a certain point, I remember one of them, who now he was a Breslever, lives in Meershar. So he was eating the same horrible food that I was eating. His name was Boruch. I said, Boruch, what's going on? He said, he'd been in yeshiva for enough time to come to this conclusion. He said, I spent so much time worrying about my food. Like, I just realized I'm spending hours a day over food. It's just food. Like, what's the big deal? So I realized, you know what? Whatever this does to me, it's not going to kill me. I'm only here for a limited period of time in my life. I'll eat whatever they serve me, and I'll get on with my life. I'm spending hours a day preparing my food and eating my food and washing up from my food and bringing my food and forgetting my food and going back to get my food. And he's right. It's like, they say that the old Chassidim had minds of silk and stomachs of leather. And present-day Chassidim have minds of leather and stomachs of silk. So we want our minds to be a little more silky and our stomachs to be a little more leathery. Okay. So what does the Nefesh Elokis also feel? Something that's not Elokus in a revealed way. In a words, it doesn't want it, doesn't it? The Nefesh Bahamis might. Matter of fact, does. Right? But the Nefesh Elokis isn't interested. And again, what's that? Just, things that are not Elokus Begilui. Things that are Parav. But again, they're not Parav. Ubefrat bedavish menaged Elokus. Obviously, something that's contrary to Elokus. Menaged. Contrary. So Boruch mizeh, he flees from this. Boruch midavar mazik, from someone who's fleeing from something that harms him, because he realizes it harms him. Uka'adma boruch mimavos, like a person fleeing from death. The barer loyal, the nefesh elokis. It's obvious to the nefesh elokis. It's clear. The misa ruchnis, spiritual death, spiritual lack of health. Rachmana litzlan, heaven forfend. Ukashi yesim misa gashmis. Chas v'shalom is worse than physical death. Physical death is the transforming a person's life from one state to another state. But it's not that life has disappeared. Physical life has disappeared, but nothing happened to life itself. The person's just living life on a different plane. Spiritual death is, when the soul is affected negatively. Some were chayiv kares, and their soul were cut off from its source. In a higher level of the soul, we'll see that the Rebbe will explain that in the 4th chapter. And that's a disaster. What does the Nefesh Elokis want? Elokus, that's what Nefesh Elokis wants. V'lases kelim lelokus, and to make vessels for Elokus. In other words, to reveal Elokus in Eilam Hazeh. V'kol gases v'chumrius yeshus u'metzius. The way the Rebbe explains the other half of life. And all of the crassness and the material nature and the self-centeredness and the existence of the Nefesh Bahamis. What's the Nefesh Bahamis all about? And this is what it's created to do, and it's very frum. That's what God created it to do. Hadu machasa umaster umailim, 3 different languages of covering and concealing. Allah hergish the Nefesh Elokis, the sensitivity of the Nefesh Elokis. The Nefesh Bahamis' first job is to make us insensitive to Elokus. If he can bring about a situation that we're not sensitive to Elokus, then he has a very good chance to control our lives. Ubepshita, simply. What does this mean simply? Just talk about it in less philosophical terms. As der Geschmack from Welt, the pleasure that a person gets in worldly matters, oilam, shu'elim, world, which comes from the word concealment. The word world means concealing, because what am I aware of? I'm aware of the existence of the world and not of that being which is giving the world its existence. Is mechasa umastir, again, 2 different languages of covering and concealing. Ufdem hergesh eloki, a person's godly sensitivity. So the Alter Rebbe says this in Tanya. You don't have to go very far in Tanya to find it. The Rebbe is saying it here. It's we find it very, very challenging. We have to know how to do it in a balanced way and in a healthy way. But to the extent that a person is into Gashmis, to the physical things, means they're mamish into it. Not that they don't partake in it. Partaking in Gashmis, you have to partake in Gashmis. You have to eat. Right? You have to exercise, you have to do things that are good for you and healthy for you, and so you'll have more energy and you'll be more alert, etc. You have to do all those things. But okay, you have to figure out how to make a living, right, at some point in life, right? Okay, so there's no question we have to deal with Gashmis. The question is, how do we deal with it? What's the mindset in dealing with Gashmis? Does it become the ikr, or is it always the tough? Why are you in Eilam Hazeh? You're in Eilam Hazeh to make sure that you're a successful part of the gross national product of whatever country you live in, right? Or do you in Eilam Hazeh because you're here to bring about a revelation of Elokus in Eilam Hazeh? And that entails all sorts of stuff that you have to do down here that's just wild and crazy. It might seem to have nothing to do with your ultimate purpose. It's just sort of a means to an end. It doesn't really seem to be an end unto itself. Okay, it depends, right? I can turn it into an end unto itself sometimes, right? Having usually people work places where there are other people, right? Not as much anymore, but they used to. Right? Okay, so you work in places where there are other people, so you can always have a positive effect on those people. You can be the kind of person that they look forward to seeing in the morning because you say good morning with a smile every morning. Okay, that affects people positively, right? It's, just you can do all sorts of. You don't have to wrap up everybody with tefillin in the office in order to have a positive effect on people. I mean, you might. There's Jews in the office and they don't put on tefillin, so at some point talk to them about it, 100%. But there's all sorts of things that you can do that are positive in a workplace. It's a mindset. So what's the mindset? What's a person truly interested in? The Eibishter and why we're really here, or do we get sidetracked by all the noise that Olam Hazeh makes? And it makes a lot of noise, Olam Hazeh. And the Eibishter created it to make a lot of noise. It's God's fault. Okay, but that's the challenge. That's what he wanted. He wanted us to deal with that and deal with it successfully. And to the extent that my geschmack is in Welt, to that extent, my geschmack will not be in Ruchnius. I can't have my cake and eat it too. It just doesn't happen. To put it in crass terms, and I apologize, but these are the terms that Chazal use, so I'll use them. Right? An adulterous relationship affects my marriage. An adulterous relationship with Gashmias affects my relationship with Kadosh Baruch Hu. Can't have both. Right? The Seder is so all the rich people in Europe always had a mistress. Okay, right, the crummy marriage. That's we call that a crummy marriage. Can you have two wives? Yeah, I don't know how they do it. Okay, the Seder, but you can.
One definitely affects the other.
I don't know. I mean, if in a world where, Yaakov Avinu, I assume, was a pretty good husband, and he had 4 wives, and I'd imagine he did it very, very well. I don't know how you do that. We don't live that way. Our relationships are different. I don't know how he did it.
Chazal says more wives increases sorcery, right?
Yes, Seder. I just saw a letter from the Rebbe, an unbelievable letter from the Rebbe, and I don't remember exactly what the reason was. But the Rebbe was writing someone in North Africa where until the Sephardim moved next to the Ashkenazim, so there was never a prohibition of Sephardim not to have only one, and not to have more than one wife. That was an Ashkenazi prohibition, not a Sephardi prohibition. And the Rebbe actually advised someone to marry a second wife. So the letter was fascinating.
Really?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what the situation was. It made perfect sense based on the situation that was being described in the letter.
What was the situation?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't remember what it was. I don't remember the specifics. But the Rebbe said it'd be a good idea to marry someone. Fascinating. But it's mutter. If it's done in a way that's al pi Torah, so then it's not going to harm the relationship. Because evidently that's the way the relationship works, which is hard for us to understand because we just so clearly don't relate that way. That's not how marriage works. Okay. This is the opposite of the intention of the creation of the world and the intention of the creation of each and every one of us. The supernal intention, in the creation of the worlds. What did the Eibishter want? Then the Sava Kadosh Baruch Hu, he had a taiva, liyos loy, that there should be for him, Yisbarach, blessed be he, a dir b'tachtenim, a dwelling place in the lower realms, al yedei avedas ha'adam, by virtue of the aveda of a person in a goof and an nefesh habahamis. What does the Eibishter want? He wants you and I to make him a dir b'tachtenim. Where? Down here in a goof with a nefesh habahamis. Okay, so then don't pretend I don't have a goof and don't pretend I don't have a nefesh habahamis. But that being said, I have to use those things in order to serve the Eibishter and somehow involve them in the service of the Eibishter. Can they be involved? Of course they can be involved because the Eibishter sent us down here in a goof and a nefesh habahamis to serve him. So we're going to pretend we don't have one and just leave the world behind? No, that's not the way the Eibishter wants things to happen. Might that be something that someone does for a limited period of time in order to produce in themselves a very powerful connection to Elokus? Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's, a person basically ignores much of the normal responsibilities in Olam Hazeh for a pretty serious part of their life, right? The first 20 years of a person's life, they have very little responsibility in Olam Hazeh. Okay, they have to eat and they have to sleep and they have to do but in terms of taking larger responsibility for their life. So we don't ask them to take larger responsibility for their life. Why? So they can focus on really important things to prepare themselves to go out into the world when they have to start taking more responsibility and do it right. And that's what Jewish education is all about. Jewish education is not about making a living. Jewish education is about figuring out how to be a successful neshama in a goof in Elam Hazeh. We don't educate our children how to make a living. People get mad at us. It's not what we're interested in, because that's not the most important thing in life. The most important thing in life is to be a successful human being, a successful Jew. What does that mean? That means your life is about the Eibishter. That means you treat people right, you treat yourself right, you treat time right. Right? That's what it means. You're going to make a living? Yeah, you'll figure out how to make a living. Right? Okay. Right, that group, that birthright group, it was a group of graduate students. We learned Rashi on relation. It wasn't Rashi about relationships, but the idea that Rashi was talking about could also be used to talk about the idea of how relationships work. And so we started doing that at the end because that's a rather important topic for North American youth. So we talked about it. And I just asked them, it was so fascinating. It was these are 22, 23, 24-year-olds, graduate students. It was a birthright graduate student trip. I asked them how many people in the room had ever read a book on marriage. Not one. Not one had ever read a book on marriage. Meaning marriage, we're going to wing that. How long did I ask? How long have you spent in school preparing to make a living? Since they were 6 years old. Okay, so forget until grade 10. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, maybe 24. Those years, they'd spent time figuring out how to make a living. How many of those years how much of that time had they spent reading and studying about how to be a better human being? Oh, I'll wing that. I'll figure that out myself. How about the other way around? I'll figure out how to make a living myself because God's in charge of that anyway. How to be a successful human being, how to be a successful neshama in a goof, that's going to take some time to try to figure out. It's a pretty serious enterprise. I mean, we're trying to do it, right? It's no joke. It's real. It's kef, it's fun, it's exciting, it's challenging, it's amazing, but it's not easy. Not an easy thing to try to do. But okay, I'll wing it, I'll figure it out. That's so easy to figure out. Right? I mean, Baruch Hashem, we have incredible guidance from people who are truly holy in giving us guidance in how to do it right. But we have to listen to them, right? They give us a recipe. God gives us a recipe. It's called the Torah. Right? The tzaddikim throughout the ages have given us an appreciation of that Torah so we can use that recipe properly and understand how the recipe works. But we have to follow the recipe, right? If I leave out the flour and the eggs, the cake's not going to work. Oh, well, it says 3 cups of flour, I'll put in 2.5, and it says 3 eggs, I'll put in 6, and I'm sorry, because I'm into eggs. I'm like into eggs. Eggs speak to me. Okay, so the baking soda. Oh no, baking soda. That's not cool. I'm not into baking soda. Okay, no baking soda.
It's not feeling.
Like sugar. Oh, sugar. No sugar. So no sugar in the cake, okay, but I put in something else instead of sugar because it's cool. They found something in some African tribe has something they use instead of sugar, and that's cool because it's an African tribe. It must be organic and cool because it's not made by some horrible company that's, international conglomerate of terrible people. Right, okay, so I end up with a cake that really didn't work very well. Right? I don't put it in the oven because the oven uses too much stuff and I'll wreck the environment if I put it in the oven. So what have I got exactly at the end? Right? And I've got all sorts of different reasons not to use this and not to use that. And, okay. The Abishah gave us a recipe and it works. If we use it right, it works. If we don't use it right, of course it's not going to work. What's the happening? I don't see God in my life. Am I following the recipe? Well, yeah, mostly, but I just left out a few things. Okay. What does the Eibushter want from us? He wants us to be in this world, Dafka, this crazy, wild, physical world with all of its enticements and all of its wild and woolly things. And to rectify it and purify it. Elevate the world. What's the world? The world's a gun. If you look at the world right, you see a gun. If you look at the world wrong, you see a desert. Is there an aspect of desert in the world? Absolutely, 100%. The Eibushter calls it a desert. Is the world a gun? Absolutely. The Eibushter calls it a gun. So which one do we see? Well, it's up to us. What do we see?
We see the desert also.
We have to appreciate the fact that it can be a desert. There's no question. And it can swallow us up. If I'm not careful, it can swallow us up. There's no question. We have to know that. So we can talk about it in terms of and Chassidus does, and our Rebbe doesn't very much. Our Rebbe, the more Chassidus of our Rebbe you'll learn, the more you'll come to this interesting conclusion that the Rebbe almost never talks about the Nefesh Bahamas. He talks about Nefesh Elokis all the time. He's just talking about how all the incredible opportunities we have in Kedusha. And the Rebbe keeps us busy in Kedusha all day long. Right? We talked about yesterday. He just keeps us busy doing things all day long. Right? That we don't have time for shtus. You want to finish Rambam and finish Chittus and do some Mitzvayim and finish a Masechta every year and all these other things you have to do. I mean, learn and make sure you enter Shabbos having learned at least one Sikha before Shabbos comes. So you have to make sure that you learn the Sikha before Shabbos. Okay, and you might have certain projects that you're doing and learning. Rebbe asked, it's hard to do, but the Rebbe asked that every day on Rashi, learn at least one Rashi well. What does that mean? I pay attention to the fact that I'm reading it? What does that mean, learn it well? Like that actually. Okay, so what that means, if you're the Rebbe, and what that means is look up the Medrashim on that Rashi so you appreciate how Rashi quoted this Medrash and not that Medrash, or he quoted half of Medrash 1 and half of Medrash 2, and try to figure out, what was wrong with the second half of the first Medrash and the first half of the second Medrash, such that he took the first half of this Medrash and the second half of this Medrash and put them together and called it Rashi on the Torah. Right, which is what makes learning Rashi so fascinating, right? Because you uncover all these amazing things that Rashi does once you start looking up his sources. You obviously have to have a book that gives you the sources. Many Rashi books, there's only a few that give you enough of the sources that you can do the work necessary. Right? Most just give you one, right? But you don't need one, you need 5. Because there might be 5 different Medrashim that Rashi could have looked at that say similar things. So when you look at those Medrashim, you realize, wow, it's really interesting. Rashi quoted half of the Gemara and half of Bereshis Rabbah. Why did he do that? What was wrong? And those are their Sikha after Sikha of the Rebbe on Rashi. Right? Every week the Rebbe would say a Rashi Sikha. Where did the questions and for the Rashi Sikhas come from? The Rebbe asked the Bachrim to write in questions. The Rebbe would talk about them the next week in February. The Rebbe wanted the Bachrim to learn Rashi and think about things and ask questions. And then the Rebbe would, if it was a good question, the Rebbe would answer the question. It was a big deal to have your question answered by the Rebbe and send them to February the next week. Right? He asked a good question. Sometimes the Rebbe the week after would say, I don't understand. Everybody heard me say a pshat in Rashi last week. Why didn't you notice that there was a real question in what I said? I could have asked this question. Well, and then the Rebbe would say things like, he did not constantly, but it happened. Well, I remember hearing it, right? The Rebbe would say that, I don't understand, just because I said it, you assume that it's absolutely true, you can't ask any questions in it, ask a question in it, because if you'd ask a good question, you realize that there's a question you could ask and you have to explain it differently. And the Rebbe would explain it differently. Everyone wants us to learn Torah. Let's take it seriously. There's no end. Like, I was possibly supposed to get this done, and then there's all this Chassidus you want to learn, and then other people will ask you, "What, you're a Lubavitcher? Yeah. Do you learn any Chassidus that isn't Lubavitch? Because Kilo, there's something wrong with you if you don't." Right? So, well, no. Oh yeah, because you guys know me. Why don't you learn some Sfas Emes? Why don't you learn some Reb Nachman? Why do you? Good idea, right? So take him to a bookshelf and show him what there is in Lubavitch Chassidus. I tell you what, you tell me when I have time with what's on this shelf to learn anything else, right? I barely know my children's names. Across the show. But there's a lot to do. There's just a lot to do. The Rebbeim keep us very, very busy. And if we really do those things that they want us to do, we're talking busy in good things, and that means we have less time for shtus. And that's part of the deal. We talked about it yesterday. Rabbi Shab says it. Rabbi doesn't say it, but that's what the Rabbi. It's clearly the Rabbi's sheet in Avodah. Just keep us busy doing good things. If you're busy doing good things, so then you stay out of trouble. Right? But good things are important. Was the intention? Why did the Abishah create the world? To put us down in a crazy place and have us elevate that crazy place. Uberfeil, what might happen in actuality? The Rebbe says, now he's going to take your kishkas out. I'm just warning you. If you can't handle it, so there's a safe room down the go sit on one of the soft couches down in the hall over there. Uberfeil ba'alehefechas. What might happen? The opposite. Sha'olam master etzla that the world might conceal from him on the light of truth. V'nis aver. And he becomes thick. Then he's gashem and becomes materialistic. Kol kach, nechsar etzloi kol chush, until it's lacking from him any sensitivity, me'ahergesh, from the hanikra feeling. Binyanim ruchnim, you can become completely insensitive to ruchnius. Shezeh ba basibas and nefesh habamis. This comes because of the nefesh habamis. That's just what the nefesh habamis is about. And if I let it do its thing, so that's what it does. Shu kavua umushrash, it's set and rooted, right? Shurish, root, sourced, but in this case, rooted. Binyane Elam, the Nefesh Habamis feels very at home in Elam Hazeh. V'zeu kol mahusa binyane, and that's its whole being. Again, left without it, we know we can elevate it, we know we can illuminate it, but if we don't, so what is it? So it's into Elam Hazeh, that's what it's into. It'll just want another hot dog. I mean, that's all it really cares about. Ubehem, and in those things, yege v'yachshev, it will contemplate and think, v'yadaber, and speak, b'chayus, be'ergish, with vitality, with a feeling, with a greisen geschmack, with a lot of pleasure. Right? Someone talking about the new restaurant they just found, someone talking about the whatever it happens to be, right? Their new car. Asher hergish zeh b'chlalusay, this sensitivity in general, ubefrat, and particularly inyan hanoyam, the pleasure, the geschmack sheyesh le bezeh, that a person has in gashmias, who shelo l'tzergish beruknis. This negates spiritual sensitivity. I can't have my cake and eat it too. I can't be in two places at once. And I want to be, and especially in this generation, because there's so much gashmias out there. We all want it. We figure we can pull it off. The Rebbeim always tell us we can't pull it off. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have everything we need in Gashmi. We should have a really nice house, and the house should be a nice house, and it should have a nice carpet, and nice couches, and a beautiful kitchen, and a dining room, so that when guests come in, they feel so at home. It's such a nice dining room. That should be a beautiful house. 100%. There's no, why not? I don't understand. But how much are you worried that the guest might come in on a rainy day with dirty shoes and sully your carpet, and so you're going to make them feel uncomfortable because you're worried about your carpet? Or you're going to want to make them feel comfortable and not worry about your carpet? Which would you rather feel uncomfortable, your carpet or their feelings?
Their feelings.
Right. Which would you rather have feel uncomfortable? You'd rather comfortable, their feelings, right? You'd rather they feel comfortable in your house. And your house shouldn't be a house, it should be a home. And they feel that when they walk in. Does it have to be fancy? It doesn't have to be fancy. Can it be? Yeah, why not? Fine, no problem. Just don't put your head in it. Right? I mean, you have to go buy a carpet, so you have to buy a nice one. Okay? Right? You have to get a couch, so get a good one. If you can afford a good one, so get a good one. No problem. Get a good couch. I should have a good couch. Nicer, it'll last longer. More comfortable. I mean, understand what I see. You don't want to so put down a piece of metal and a piece of board and a board in the back and tell people it's a couch. No, you get a nice couch. What's the problem? Just the question is, where's my head? Is my head in the fact that the curtains have to match the carpet? They shouldn't clash. Where's my head? Right? I remember, I feel bad talking about this because Izzy just bought an apartment, and so he's probably going to have to spend. I remember when we bought in Har Nof, so everybody I knew had just bought an apartment because the neighborhood had just been built, and everybody was moving in, and everybody was, planning a kitchen, and it takes up so much of your head for the while you're doing it, and you have to do it. I mean, you have to plan the kitchen, right? What are you going to do? But you have to make sure you do it in a way that doesn't take over your life, and it's not easy, right? It's like. So I remember talking he was a friend, but when I first came to Eretz Yisrael, he was one of my teachers. He was about 6-7 years older than me. So he's now in Gan Eden, very special person. He was a Kayan. So he had bought in Har Nof at the same time we bought, and he was busy doing it. So I asked him, Rabbi Greenberg, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. I said, why? He said, because Mashiach's going to come. And I'm a Kayan, and they're going to ask me to bring Karbanis in the Beis HaMikdash, and I'm going to tell them, look, Karbanis I don't know, but I have a really nice marble tabletop for my kitchen, and you want to see my taps? My taps are unbelievable. He was going crazy. I'm going crazy. I have to deal with all that. You have to put in a kitchen. What are you going to do? Not put in a kitchen? You have to put in a kitchen. So obviously you put in a kitchen. What do? Oh, I don't care. You tell the guy in the store, give me any faucet you want. You don't do that. You look at the faucet. Which one seems nicest? Which one do you want? Your wife obviously is going to have more input into that than you, because she's going to probably use the faucet more than you, although hopefully you wash the dishes. But okay, it's like gets in your head, and you say, I can't wait until this is over. I can't stand this. This is right. You're doing it now, no? It's such a pain. It's just such a pain. Now, but you have to do it. You can't not do it. What are you gonna do? Not have beds? You need a bed. You gotta go buy beds. What are you gonna do? So you go to bed stores. You're looking at beds, and you're sitting there going, what am I doing? Well, this one feels good. I know anything about beds. Okay, you want me? I tell you what. Let me spend the night here. I'll sleep in a few beds. I'll tell you which one I like. And okay, that's a lamazah. But we have to somehow navigate all of that it doesn't take over. And it can take over. So really the person is spending days looking up on internet, finding what's the best faucet. There's all sorts of good faucets. For goodness sake, you just find the faucet that, you find out, you ask 5 people, what's the best company for faucet? If you can afford the best, fine, great. What's the best company for faucets? So almost everybody will probably tell you the same company. And one guy will say, oh no, you're not, right? So you buy a faucet from that company, and you ask the guy in the store, is this a good one? Yes. Okay. Do I get a guarantee? Yes. For how long? 4 days. Okay, fine. and in America you get 5 days. And you buy your faucet and you get on with life, right? And you hope that the plumber that you picked is a plumber who knows what he's doing, right? I remember the plumber did our building. He was the nephew of the guy who built the building. So we had a particular plumbing thing in our. This made us feel good about the pipes in our building. And we had an issue with one of the bathrooms, so we asked. His name was Yoram. He's a great guy. Yoram, can you come to our bathroom? And we have a problem. He says, no. For that you need a real plumber. Like the guy who did all the pipes in this building isn't a real plumber? I don't understand. Now what? Well, he wasn't. Most of us have replaced our pipes.
Oh, Yoram.
But Yoram voted Gimel. It was Gimel with the Sturm, when the Rebbe told everybody to vote a good, was this Mem Tes. So Yoram was outside, and I was sitting. We had an office in the Machsan those days, so I was sitting in the office, and I hear Yoram outside schmoozing. So I ran outside. Yoram, who are you voting for? So I was about to try to convince him, be a good chassid and convince him to vote a Gouda. So it says a Gouda, Gimel. So, how'd that happen? Some Lubavitch just came to my house. He told me, you don't have to worry about it. I'm done. So Yoram voted Gimel. Yoram. He was such a sweet Jew, but he wasn't such a good plumber. Better to be a good Jew than a good plumber, but if you're not such a good plumber, maybe don't be a plumber. ובפרט עניין הנוים, the geschmack שיש לי בזה, שלו is hergish beruchnis. It takes away our hergish and ruchnis. And we have to be honest. Right? You can't have your cake and eat it too, as they say. Where does this come from? The coldness of the nefesh bahamis. The coldness of, for what? For godly things. It's anything but cold for physical things. It's very hot and passionate relative to physical things, but it's very cool and calm about godly things. The etzem koldkeit, the essential coldness, shaloi, of him, nefesh bamis, in inyanim ruchnim, regarding spiritual matters. You have to wake him up. You have to get him excited about spiritual matters. But we saw earlier, once you get him excited about spiritual matters, shoo, he gets into it. Because when the Nefesh Bahamis is into something, he doesn't, it's very rare the Nefesh Bahamis is going to say, I feel like chocolate pudding next Tuesday. He doesn't talk that way. Nefesh Bahamis, if he wants chocolate pudding, he wants it now. If the Nefesh Bahamis wants Elokus, he wants it now. If the Nefesh Bahamis wants Mashiach, he wants it now. That's why the Rebbe has to say, we want Mashiach now. Who's saying that? Get our Nefesh Bahamis to say, we want Mashiach now. Because my Nefesh Bahamis doesn't, he's like that. We want Mashiach next Tuesday. I don't see Mashiach next Tuesday. Nefesh Bahamis doesn't live that way. It doesn't relate to things that way. The Etzem Cold Guide in spiritual matters. Why? Third line. Because he's animalistic in the essence of his being. That's what he is. He's a Nefesh Bahamis. The Shmei Mechiach Alav. His name tells everything you want to know about him. Nefesh Bahami. He's an animal soul, so he's an animal. Animals bad? No. Are they godly? Well, they aren't so sensitive to Elokus. That's not, it's not the first thing that pops into your mind when you think about a dog. Kol chayusei v'argashasu rak binyanim bahamim. All of their vitality and all of their sensitivity is in animalistic things. What does a dog get excited about? A milk biscuit. Gets excited. He starts going crazy. He'll start jumping up and down, and his tail is wagging, and his tongue is... He's just so excited. Why? Because you have a little cookie that you're going to give him because he's sat. He's just so excited. I don't know what to do with himself. Okay, excited. Sit down and learn a mimer with him. See how excited he gets. Probably not much. Now the Rebbe describes people. It's pretty wild, his description of people. But I mean, what are you going to do? And it's interesting, when the Rebbe describes people who are lacking sensitivity in Elokus, he's not talking about people who are sitting and drinking beer and burping all day. That's not what he's talking about. Look what he talks about. We see the Yeshan Nashim Ke'elu, there are such people, in addition to the fact, they're empty of Torah, of wisdom, Torah, and proper emotional attributes. Their actions are like a behema mamish. Oh, so now what? What does this mean? They drink beer all day? No. Shedorsin umaligin rachmana litzlan, that they trample and scorn heaven forfend. Minyanim ruchnim, spiritual things. She'ein lem shum musag klal, about which they have no comprehension whatsoever. Harihu behema mamish, like a behema. Why? What's a behema do? Who walks and tramples, mibli havchein klal. A cow walking, what will he walk on? Whatever's in the way. He doesn't pay any attention to what's in the way. He'll trample whatever's there. Right? That's a behemoth. What situation might a person come to? And it's very, very common. Right? That what? A person who wouldn't know how to find a Rashi and Chumash, wouldn't know which is the Gemara, which is Rashi, which is Tosfos, wouldn't know, has never heard of Shulchan Aruch, wouldn't know who Rav Yosef Karo is, wouldn't know who the Rambam, maybe the Rambam Maimonides, wouldn't know the Rambam, maybe heard of Maimonides, right? That person will tell you their theory on Torah and mitzvahs as to whether or not it's true or not. It's like me telling you a theory on nuclear physics. I don't have any theories on nuclear physics. Why? Because I don't know anything about nuclear. How can I possibly have a theory on whether nuclear physics is the best, is what's better, quantum or, something else? I don't know. I don't know. How am I supposed to know? I don't know anything about it. I mean, okay, besides, of course, I've read some of those books that we all who don't know anything about this, that we all read in the bathroom, written by those quantum mechanics physicists who try to make it understandable to the rest of us, and we get through 30 pages and then they lose us. Okay, so there's, what's his first name? Feynman? What was Feynman? Richard Feynman. Fascinating guy, absolutely fascinating, and I would love to understand the rest of the book, but he loses me after 20 pages. There's a guy named Green from Cornell, probably another Jew. Also, Physics for Idiots, one of those things. Right? Fascinating book for the first 20 pages, and then he loses me. Right? I mean, my wife is a doctor, so she studied science, and I ask her, she says he loses me after 30 pages. No, I can't follow these guys. Okay, Beseder. Well, I got theory as to whether Green or Feynman has the right take on things. Oh yeah, let me tell you what I think. Okay, what kind of that's so stupid. Why would I? Right, okay. So how can someone who's never ever learned the Torah have a position as to whether or not the Torah came from God or not? Right? Whether or not Yetzias Mitzrayim really happened? What? Can you describe the event that you're telling me didn't really happen? What is it that didn't happen? Can they tell me? No. Couldn't they? Oh, there were 10 plagues. What were they? I don't know. How'd they work? Which was first? What was the purpose of them? What does the Ramban say? What does Rashi say? What does Chassidus say? But how can I have a theory about that? Right? Is that a bad person? Not a bad person. He's a wonderful person. But in that sense, the Rebbe says he's like a behemoth, because he's trampling all over something that is so holy and so beautiful and so special without any sensitivity to what he's stepping on. That's what the Rebbe just said. The beer and the burping, that's not the issue. The issue is a complete lack of sensitivity, of course. So a person will trample all over it. It's so powerful what the Rebbe says. It's so amazing. Right? Shedorsim and maligin rachman l'tzan minyanim aruchnim. Right? Ad kedei kach that it might even be, and not that I'm saying that we're bad people if this is the case, or you're a bad person if this is the case, if it's one person in the room, or it's everybody in the room, or whatever. But we have to, what was the Rebbe teach us? Gaon Yaakov, the pride of Yaakov, not pride in a negative way, pride in a positive way. There is no way in the world that you should feel anything but pride, and again, not negative pride, from the fact that you have to daven mincha in a gate at an airport. Why should you feel embarrassed for doing something that everybody else in the room should also be doing? Everybody should be praying to God one way or the other. Okay, they're not all Jewish. Okay, beside it. So they don't all have to daven mincha. But why should you be embarrassed to daven mincha? They should be embarrassed to not daven. Especially the fact that they're going to go into a metal tube and fly 500 miles an hour, 35,000 feet in space. I mean, why are they not davening? Okay, beside it. So you have to be embarrassed. You have to be embarrassed for ordering kosher food on the plane. No. The Rebbe told Gershom Mendel Gorelick to order kosher. He asked him once, he was on his way back to Italy, the Rebbe asked him if he ordered kosher food on the plane. So he said, no, he doesn't eat it, so I order it. So the Rebbe said, there's three, the Rebbe was on one plane in his life, in 1946, so I don't imagine plane travel in 1946 was quite the same as it is now. The Rebbe went to get his mother in Paris. So
did they come back by boat?
I think they came back by boat. Okay. So the Rebbe told them there's three reasons you should order kosher food on a plane. One is that the company should know there's Jews who order kosher food. Okay. The second is that when they you have to be the Rebbe to know these things. When they give out the food on the plane, now they do this less. They're less obvious about this now. But it used to be in the old days, they would come with this list.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be looking at it. They're very rare. Usually they know who you are. Usually they've got it somewhere else. Like usually they come up, you're 16J, so you have kosher food, right? They would have this list. And there would be red, yellow lines through certain names. It was very obvious, the list. I haven't seen the list for a while. But in the old days, they always saw the list. They'd come with this list. And the Rebbe said they come with a list with the people who ordered kosher food, and your name is on the list, but you can also look at the list quickly and see where people with Jewish names are sitting, so you can go over and talk to them during the flight. That's the second reason why you should order kosher food, because if you don't do that, it won't put on the list near you. The third reason is that even if you don't eat it, find a Jew who will and give them your kosher food. Better they should eat your kosher food than the stuff they're serving on the Torah. Those are the three reasons that Gershon Mendel was told by the Rebbe to order kosher food on a flight. The next flight I went on, which was actually not even planned, because unfortunately it was to go to a levaya of someone. So I ended up flying here to London, London to Chicago, Chicago to Vancouver, because I just had to get there as fast as I could. So from London to Chicago on United, I was sitting next to a wonderful, wonderful guy, a ponytail, about 45, 50 years old, professor in the University of Chicago, Jewish. We were schmoozing, and the United Airlines brought me my pastrami sandwich, which I don't eat on United Airlines. And I asked him, I just heard this story from Rabbi Kaplan. I asked him, do you want a pastrami? Pastrami? I love pastrami. You've got pastrami? I said, yeah, what? They gave the kosher stuff as pastrami? I ate the stuff they give me. And he ate my kosher pastrami sandwich on the plane. The next plane I was on, I got to give my kosher food to somebody. And I don't think it's happened twice since. This was 30 years ago. I don't think it's happened twice since. But he ate my pastrami sandwich, this guy. He was so into it. You got mustard? I said, here, take the plate. There's mustard. There's everything you want. Oh, this is amazing. A Jew wants a pastrami sandwich. Was he want the stuff that they give him? Some, who knows what it was. Like, okay. He was so excited, his pastrami sandwich. Made him think about his Jewish grandmother. Imu afar, whether it's dirt, ve'etz in a tree, or guf adam, right? The bulls in that place in Spain, when they're running through the streets, they make a difference. Oh my goodness, a person, I better step over him. Yeah, right. Why is that? Because he's a bull. He knows. He has no sensitivity to what's underneath him. The behema ain't la das. The behema doesn't have das. Doesn't have the wherewithal to come to a sophisticated decision that maybe this is something I shouldn't walk on. It's in the way, so he walks on it. So too there are people like this. Shem kebehema mamish, they're like a behema. They scorn the Torah, mitzvahs. Umehem, there are those, habeichim lehem drochim shenim. They choose other ways, other paths. Mitzvah and Mekamim, this mitzvah they fulfill, this one they don't want to fulfill. Because after all, I know better than God what's good for me. Vadoima, if I would have this any sensitivity, Elokus, I'd realize, hold on, the Eibishter created me, Mustami knows what's good for me, so even though this mitzvah, it doesn't speak to me as much as this mitzvah, and that's perfectly reasonable. There's certain things that some people will find more in line with their general character, and things that are less in line. Fine, not a problem. That's reasonable. People are different. On the other hand, what? This is what the Eibishter wants, so you do what the Eibishter wants. I understand. Well, I know best what's good for me. I don't know what's good for me. The Eibishter knows best. Just like I might go to a nutritionist to tell me what's better for me to eat. I don't know, so I'll go to someone who knows. Okay, fine. What, do I have to trust the nutritionist? Well, if I'm smart, maybe I'll look into who's the best. I'll be probably smart to trust them, right? And why not? Well, I don't know anything about it. Remember once this story came up. It came up the other day also. Sometimes stories pop in your head. I used to teach we're going to finish the paragraph, don't worry. I used to teach a class in Citibank once a week in Citibank in Tel Aviv. There's a class in Chassidus. Tuesdays I still learn. I have the things in my ears. Tuesday at the end before Minchas, I'm learning with somebody in Citibank. We're learning together from Citibank. But that class used to be a class in Chassidus about 20 years ago or something. So maybe more. So there were like 15 people who used to learn Chassidus at lunch in Citibank, because the head of Citibank in Tel Aviv was close to a friend of mine who's a shaliach in Miami, and he made the shidduch, and so he wanted a class in Chassidus in his bank. So Citibank in Tel Aviv had a class in Chassidus. There was a woman, every time I walked out of the class, there was a woman who used to wait outside to make sure that I knew she was there, but not in class. So, and she would always say, "Hi, Rabbi, how are you?" So she also wanted me to know that her son was 9 generations, father from, ben after ben, son after son, from the Baal Shem Tov, from the Baal Shem Tov's daughter. Right? That her husband was descended directly from the Baal Shem Tov's daughter, Adel. And she was very proud of that. So I said, wow, that's amazing. And why don't, so, we're learning the Torah with the Baal Shem Tov. Chassidus, why don't you come? She said, no, I don't, it's my soul and I understand it best. I don't need any rabbis telling me how to express my soul because it's my soul and I know it best. So sometimes when someone says something like that and you'd like a retort that might be in place and useful, you usually think about it as you're driving home. And you then replay the whole conversation and you say it to her and you get some clandestine pleasure from saying it to her on your drive home, but it's irrelevant, right? But sometimes the Eibishter, the Eibishter is always kind, but sometimes he's in a very revealed way kind and he puts it in your head right away. So that time he put it in my head right away and I said very calmly, that's interesting. Do you go to doctors? She said, what do you mean? I said, well, it's your body. You should know better than anybody else. Why would you go to a doctor to tell you about your body? The last time I ever saw her, unfortunately, she never showed up in the hall again. Which is chaval. I guess it made an impression, but she didn't want to deal with it. Right? But she wouldn't show up in the hall again. Which is chaval. But it's true, right? Generally, I think to a certain degree, even after COVID, I think people still basically trust doctors, a lot less than they used to before COVID. But even after COVID, I think people still trust doctors to a certain degree because they, generally have our welfare in mind and they know more than us about the problem that we're dealing with. Okay, so we'll trust them. Okay. So too, these gentlemen know more about our soul than we do, so we should trust them. Vadoyma, the kol zeh ba'amia azus is chutzpah, brazenness, vakrirus, and the coldness of the nefesh ba'amis, asher zehu asiba, this is the reason, vagorim, and the cause, masha adam ba'li dei aveda rachman litzlan. Why a person can come to avera. Why? Because we're not sensitive enough to Elokus. If we were sensitive enough to Elokus, we wouldn't do it, right? But at that moment, we lose that sensitivity. We lose the plot, that temporary insanity that the Rebbe discussed. Shehur ruach shtus. It's the spirit of folly, the sitra achra. Vakisui, the nefesh habahamis, and the fact that the nefesh habahamis covers up our nefesh elokis. Shehem ma'alidei, meaning the sitra achra, the ruach shtus, the nefesh habahamis. Shehem ma'limim u'mastirim alor emes. They conceal the light of truth. Until we can actually involve ourselves in activity that's the opposite of the intention of our creation in the first place. The that the supernal intention for the creation of the world was to rectify it, and to make it, the world, the klila lakus, because that's really what the world is. When the Eibusha looks at the world, what does he see? He sees a dir b'tachtonim. He sees a place that's full of him. He just wants you and I to see that. Our advice is that you and I should see that. He sees it. He knows what the world really is. By virtue of the fact that the Nefesh Bamish covers up that truth, the opposite can happen. I can see the world as somehow existing by virtue of itself and being the be-all and end-all of reality, as opposed to just a kli to reveal the Eibishter. Sha'olam, that the world, loy die, not enough. She'ena misbader mizdakech. Not only is it not elevated and purified, allow it to conceal alar emes, the truth. That's the ruach shtus that covers up the truth. See the kitzer, and tomorrow we'll start Oish Daled. Yavar, the ruach shtus, take it for taiva of nefesh b'amis b'chlal. The ruach shtus, which is the power of the taiva of the nefesh b'amis in general. Mechasim ala emes, covers up the truth. The gormim and causes heder hergish elokus, a lack of sensitivity to godliness. Ve'ilu mitzvahs, and the beauty of mitzvahs, the loftiness of mitzvahs. And it also makes us insensitive to the lowliness of being far from the Eibishter and mitzvahs. Friedrich Rebbe sort of puts his hands in your kishkas and squeezes and gives a big pull.
What is it? Mizdaka?
Mizdake, purify.